August 18th, 2021 board meeting. And remind everyone to please mute your audio when not speaking, as well as state your name prior to making a comment or motion, and second for an action item. Thank you. I'd like to begin by asking each commissioner to please respond with a here when I call out their name. Commissioner Bagnell.
I am here.
Commissioner Doan.
I'm here.
Commissioner Duggan.
Here.
And Commissioner Schmidt.
Here.
Righto. All right. So the first item of business this evening is a public hearing. And this public hearing is to consider adopting Resolution 10-21, a resolution establishing water rates and other service charges for the Tualatin Valley Water District with an effective date of November 1st, 2021. First, we will hear a staff presentation, and then I will open the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to offer testimony in support or opposition to this item will be given 5 minutes unless an extension is granted by the board. If your testimony contains questions, you will be contacted by staff or receive a response in writing that addresses your questions after the meeting. In most cases, the board will not interact with you during the meeting. We are collecting information. To maintain a welcoming and a harassment-free environment for everyone, the board may exclude individuals who disrupt the meeting. Following the public testimony, I will close the hearing and we will hear any additional comments from staff or the board. The board will take action at the September 15th board meeting after consideration of the testimony received this evening, along with the email, letters, and comment forms received throughout the rate proposal process. So at this time, we are going to hand this meeting off to the staff and Paul Matthews for a presentation.
Thank you, President Sanders and commissioners. Tonight we are here to present information about the proposed changes to water rates and other service charges. I want to start by talking about the district's financial management process. And as board members, you've seen this many times. In fact, we've also presented this to the public in the various open houses that we have. But I think it's worth describing it here just for the public record. It starts in the early spring, late winter, early spring, with the development of financial strategies for the district. The financial strategies are then presented to the board, and we're given guidance on developing a financial plan. And actually, the board did give us guidance at its March meeting on the financial strategies and approved the district's financial plan at its May meeting. That frames then the budget process, and the budget process is designed to receive public input. It is also designed to produce a 2-year spending plan, a spending plan that sets legal appropriations for the district and establishes the ability of the district to spend money consistent with that budget. So the financial plan is a 30-year plan, looks out over the long term. The budget is that 2-year spending plan that is very specific and ties back to the legal spending limits and the appropriations. The third part of our process is the rates, and that's what we're doing here tonight, is we're developing rates that support the 30-year financial plan as well as the 2-year budget spending plan. All this is in preparation then for delivering the services to our customers that we do over the biennium, the 2-year period. Now we did have an approved rate setting process. We brought this to the board in July, and the board directed us to undertake a public process for this rate setting. It started with 2 open houses, the first of which, or 3 open houses I should say. Because of COVID, these open houses are virtual just like this meeting is. But on Wednesday, August 11th, from noon until 1:30, we conducted our first open house, and we followed the talk and water format that we've been using for other items. And that open house, virtual open house at noon, was intended to attract members of the public that had the ability to join during the middle of the day. In addition to that, we had one at 6 p.m. because we recognize that the members of the public can't always meet during noon, so we want to have an opportunity in the evening to make it available to those customers. During those open houses, we did receive public comment, and we've done that throughout the process, and I'll talk more about that tonight. The other part of this rate setting process is tonight's meeting, where we will have a public hearing. We did notice this meeting consistent with requirements of Oregon law so that, again, the public can participate. And we can receive public comment tonight as well, either presented orally or in written form. We'll have one more virtual open house. This one will be on a Saturday weekend to make it available yet to other customers who aren't able to attend on the Wednesday noon or Wednesday evening meeting. It'll start at 9:30 a.m., run roughly until 11 o'clock, and again, we'll receive public comment. The approved rate setting process, which the District Board of Commissioners approved at its July meeting, includes holding the public comment period open until August the 25th. It will close at 4 p.m. on August the 25th. All comments that we receive before that deadline will be included in the public record. And then, as you mentioned, as President Sanders mentioned, September 15th at a regular board meeting, the board will be asked to take action on the proposed resolution. So we went through this process during the open houses to explain people's opportunity to participate, and that's hopefully where we get comments from the public in the public comment period. All right. During the open house, we also presented the overall strategy that the district has, and it started with our CEO describing some of the risks that we have to the water system. These risks, we talk a lot about them, but include, for example, the Cascadia Subduction Zone earthquake that is a threat to the Portland area, in fact, to the West Coast, drought, climate change, power outages, and fires that can interrupt the provision of water. Based on those risks, the board has directed for many years the district to pursue multiple sources of water. That increases the reliability and the resilience of our water system. Part of that is actually river water, which is the addition of the Willamette River to our portfolio of water supply sources at the Mid-Willamette River down by Wilsonville. Dave Kraska talked quite a bit about that during the open house, and will be available again on Saturday to do the same. Also, reservoirs. As you know, we are part owners in the Barney Reservoir, and so we have stored water in our reservoirs that we can use. Our aquifer storage and recovery. These are wells that we inject water during the wintertime when water is more plentiful in the Pacific Northwest. Treated water goes into the aquifer, and then we can access that either in an emergency or to augment our summer supplies. And regional partnerships are an important part of the district's water supply. Currently, we have very significant connections to the city of Portland, and we receive quite a bit of water from the city of Portland. We also have connections to our partners at the Joint Water Commission, where we are a partner in that joint venture, and other interconnections with other water utilities that provide benefits to both TVWD as well as those other agencies. And the last one I want to make mention of is water conservation. The district's been very fortunate to have a conservation program that has allowed us to schedule this expansion that we're going to be talking about in the Willamette River, to schedule that out and give us a little more time to get the financing and funding in place. So we're very appreciative of the water conservation effort as well. So how do we use the money that our customers provide? The major drivers that we have in our rates is the construction of that additional water supply on the Willamette River that Dave Kraska talked about in the open houses, as well as we spend money operating the system and funding repairs and replacements of some of our aging infrastructure. Those are important parts of our rates. And finally, purchased water. The district does purchase water from the joint venture with at the Joint Water Commission, but also from the city of Portland. So our water rates fund all those things. It's important to note that TVWD is funded entirely from water rates, fees, and charges, including system development charges, and that we receive no property taxes to fund our operations. So what is our near-term infrastructure investment? We've seen this slide. I've presented it year after year, and we are looking at the coming big investment in the Willamette water supply system. So to date, we've spent $180 million on that program, and you can see the spending as it goes out into the future. I have slides a little bit later in the presentation where I'll go into more detail here, but this lays out what we're looking at. It's that near-term large investment in the capital improvement, peaking in 2023 in total of almost $250 million in that year. So this is what we're doing, investing quite a bit in our infrastructure. We recognize that this is a big cost, and in fact, with COVID-19 affecting the district's financial situation and that of our customers, we've taken measures to make our water as affordable as possible. First, in the most recent budget, we reduced our personnel service budget by 2.8%. That was an important part of trying to provide financial flexibility during the COVID period. We've also deferred over $50 million of infrastructure projects, and we continue to partner with other utilities to lower the cost of our infrastructure. So we've done all those things to manage our cost. And during the open houses that we've had and the ones that we are going to have, Dave Krask goes through an elaborate presentation to explain how our Willamette water supply program is going to work. And he presents the mission and several other key elements of that. I'm not going to duplicate Dave's presentation. A, I'm not qualified, and B, he's a great presenter. So if you want more information on that, please tune in to forthcoming open house, or you can watch the prior open houses that are available on the district's YouTube channel. But the important thing to take away from this slide is that we are doing this in partnership with the cities of Hillsboro and Beaverton. So TVWD, Hillsboro and Beaverton are jointly funding the Willamette water supply program. It has a clear mission. I'm going to just touch on a few elements of that as we go through it. Dave presents an overview of the system, which includes an intake down at the Willamette River near Wilsonville, an intake that TVWD invested in more than 20 years ago, a new state-of-the-art treatment plant near Sherwood, 30-plus miles of large diameter transmission pipeline to bring the water from the Willamette River up to the treatment plant and then the finished water into the partner service area, and water storage tanks to operate the system. And Mr. Kraska provides an excellent overview of that during the open houses. One of the things that the program is very proud of is the support that it has for the local economy. And this is amazing in my view as well, that to date, 94% of the money spent on the Willamette water supply system is benefiting the local economy. And we're talking that 94% is businesses that we consider local, and that is within 50 miles of the project site itself. 3% regional, and that includes Oregon and Washington, businesses that are more than 50 miles, but within those two states, and then outside Oregon and Washington, another 3%. So the program itself has benefited from, has benefited the local economy, and it's also benefited by using local resources to produce the infrastructure we need. And Dave also talks about the ways that the program controls the budget, how they've broken up the bid packages in a way that attracts the maximum amount of competition from local contractors and national contractors to give us the best price by using the market as a mechanism to drive competition. We negotiate the best prices and quality of services to make sure that the investments we make are going to be long-lasting and effective. We make cost-effective engineering design decisions to lower the cost and keep the services at the level we want. Proactively manage risk, and we partner on the projects, not just with our partners of the City of Hillsboro and the City of Beaverton, but also with other partners, like the cities that we pass through, the City of Wilsonville. We combine our projects with theirs, ODOT, with the county, so that we can keep the program moving at low cost and lower interruption to our citizens that we serve. We rigorously manage all aspects of the program to stay on schedule, and Dave would tell you, and as at the open houses explained, how important the schedule is to maintaining the budget, that the schedule is one of the key elements to keep this program on budget. And I'm glad to say that the program is on budget. So partnerships save money and they reduce the impact to our customers. You know about the partnerships with TVWD, Hillsboro, Beaverton, they're the program partners, but also some examples that Dave gives of where we've partnered with the city of Wilsonville and ODOT, where we partnered with Washington County, and in fact, where we partnered with private developers. So all those are taken as opportunities to reduce cost and reduce the impacts on our customers. And Mr. Krask talks about that during the open houses, as well as how we manage our cost. As part of the cost management this year, as we were looking at the impacts of COVID, we've deferred one reservoir, the two reservoirs that we have. We'll build the second reservoir later when demands increase. We've diverted most of what is called PLW 2.0, which is a major transmission pipeline that runs just north of TV Highway up to Highway 26, again, to save money. And they've had other deferrals, and Dave talks about that during the open houses. But taking the total, this was done so we could, again, react and favorably affect the cost given the impacts of COVID-19 on our revenues. Now I want to transition over from talking about the program to talk about TVWD's financial performance, because the rates themselves, if we're an ongoing business, starts with the performance that we've had to date. And we cover this in the open house as well. I'm going to summarize this. I give it in more detail during the open house. And I know for you, the board members, you've heard this before, but some members of the public, I'd like them to join us at the open house if they have further questions about this. But in summary, here's what we know from fiscal year, from the 2019-21 biennium. First of all, COVID-19 did negatively affect our water sales revenue. I talked about the proactive measures that we've taken to offset some of those impacts, savings that we've had, and I'll talk more about those. But COVID-19 did have a negative effect on our water sales revenue and our ability to leverage our financial structure. So there's some other technical details there. I mentioned system development charges have exceeded plan, and I want to explain what system development charges are just for a moment. The district, as part of its policies that customers should pay in proportion to their cost of services, assesses a charge on new development to offset the cost that growth brings to the district. So system development charges are these one-time charges that are assessed on new development, so they pay their fair share, and our existing customers are not expected to subsidize growth within the district. Those actually exceeded plan largely because of strong system development charge revenue that occurred prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So on the revenue side, our water sales revenues were definitely affected by COVID. System development charges, they were at the latter half of the biennium, but we had a good head start on that. We exceeded plan. On the expenditure side, management focused on savings to provide more financial flexibility during the COVID-19 crisis. So once we hit that, we kept vacancies open that we would have. For example, we wouldn't fill a vacancy unless it was approved by the CEO and had to be a very critical vacancy to be filled. And we held those vacancies open to the extent that we could. Our operating expenditures came in below budget. Now I say below budget, we are still getting invoices from vendors, and some of them will be slow, and we need to score those under our accounting principles to last year's budget. So in the coming months, we'll have a fuller accounting of that, but we are well under budget. We have higher than anticipated bad debt expenses, notwithstanding that. So as customers find it difficult to pay their water bills, we take what's called a bad debt expense. There's a technical adjustment that we have to do to recognize that it is considered an expense. It is included in our budget, but even with that higher bad debt expense, we still were able to keep our expenditures below the budget. And our capital expenditures were similarly below budget. So that's all good news on the expenditure side. On the cash side, our projected ending fund balances are higher than expected, and that's largely based on the savings that we had on operating expenses and the delay on capital improvements. Negatively affected by the revenues, but positively affected by the SDC. So on balance, our projected ending fund balance were higher than we expected. And it's important to note that we have $60 million in cash accessible from our WIFIA loan. So the WIFIA is the low interest loan that we got from the EPA that allows us to build our infrastructure. It's a $388 million loan at a 1.35% interest rate, really an advantageous way to finance these improvements for our customers. So our conclusion on the past biennium is that COVID-19 did reduce our revenues, and it's affecting the district's financial performance and our debt strategy. We've had to make some adjustments based on that. The savings have offset near-term losses in revenue despite increases in our bad debt expense. We're happy about that. And the district's cash position remains strong especially considering the access that we have to our WIFIA loan. So we're in good condition in that regard. The district, as I mentioned, part of our process is to develop and have a financial plan approved. And I'm going to step through the financial plan and how it affects our rates. Now, this is the slide that I presented earlier at the beginning of the presentation that shows the capital outlays that we're expecting. The blue area in this chart is the expected spend on the Willamette Water Supply Program. The gray area is the in-district CIP. I do want to point out one thing. The gray area includes our investment in what's called the Metzger Pipeline East, which is a major pipeline that the program is building for TVWD that is going to run down Shoals Ferry down Shoals Ferry into the Metzger service area, which is over near Washington Square. This shows it graphically. Below the graph, you can also see the table that shows the dollar amounts and what we're spending over time. You can see the total dollar amount over the next period of time and how we're funding that. We are going to use long-term debt to help fund this program, and part of that will be that low-interest WIFIA loan that I talked about before that is funding the bulk of it. In addition to that, right now we're expecting about $36 million in revenue bonds, traditional revenue bonds, that we may issue to finish the program off. We have some other strategies in place where we may be able to get some more low-interest funding, and we're going to pursue that, but our financial plan is based on the realities that we have now, and we will work to reduce that, but for right now, we're assuming $36 million of additional borrowing beyond our WIFIA loan. I present risk to the forecast every time I present a forecast to the board and to the public, because we need to be transparent as to what we don't control. There are a lot of elements that go into our financial forecast that can and will and have changed. So it's important for us to keep in mind that these forecasts will change over time. The first item I have here is higher cost from Portland, and we purchase a lot of our water from the city of Portland. The city of Portland has costs that they need to charge out for those services. They're also building a new treatment facility that is now required to deal with cryptosporidium issue that they have. And so we are looking to manage those costs from the city of Portland, but again, that is something we look into, that we look as a risk to our forecast. Interest rates, we have a very favorable low interest rate on our WIFIA loan, but we do have some interest rate risk on that revenue bond I was talking about, that last $36 million. Our capital expenditures, if you're watching the news, you've undoubtedly heard about the inflation risks that we have in the economy in general, and so we're watching that carefully. The generalized increase in inflation can increase the cost of our capital projects, and that's something that has our attention. And then other factors, and you might remember when we talked about this 2 years ago, I listed economic downturn or changes in water demands. I didn't anticipate COVID-19, but nevertheless, that was the risk that we ended up experiencing as we went through the past year. So given that, the assumptions, and given the financial plan, consistent with, again, the financial plan, the budget, are the rates. And presented here are the rates that are consistent with those documents. TVWD has both a fixed and volume charge. I'm going to talk about the volume charge first and talk about the impact that has. So we have a two-block rate structure. The first block is the non-peaking block, or that first increment of water that is lower cost for us to provide customers because it's more even throughout the year. It doesn't have to have the peak capacity that we have for water just used in the summer months. So the block one rate would be going up from $562 effective November 1, 2021 to $615, and then to $673 in November of 2022. The block two rate would go from about $8 to about $8.75 to $9.60. Now this is per CCF. A CCF is about 748 gallons of water. The block breaks from block one to block two. For a single family residential customer, it's at 28 CCF per month, or 14 CCF on a monthly basis. So 14 in a month, 28 over that typical 2-month billing cycle. For all of the customer classes, it's 140% of their 12-month average gets them from block one to block two. Those structures, both the blocks themselves as well as the block thresholds where they break are designed, again, around the district's cost of service principle. So those businesses and residential customers that put a greater peak demand on the system are going to be paying more for that peak capacity, so that customers that use water more uniformly throughout the year won't be subsidizing those large peak customers. We also have a fixed charge, which is based on the size of meter. And the fixed charge recovers the cost of meter reading, billing, and maintaining services, but it also includes part of the fire protection charge. So some of the cost the district has is to oversize the system to provide water throughout its service area in the event of a fire. It's a very important part of our mission, and it does cost money, and it isn't related directly to the amount of water that you use. We provide that capacity regardless of use. So part of that is included in our fixed monthly charges. So presented here are the fixed monthly charges that, again, vary by meter sizes. This is on a monthly basis. Many of our residential customers are billed on a bi-monthly basis, but we present this on a monthly basis because it's more consistent with how other utility bills are paid for. We look at the impact on our customers, and presented here is an impact for our typical single-family customer. So that's somebody that uses 7 CCF of water, or 700 cubic feet of water during a month. That's 14 CCF over a 2-month period. This presents the fixed and the volume charges graphically, so you can see the relative difference. My next slide presents the same information in a tabular form so that you can actually see the impacts and the numbers. So November 2021, for the typical customer, we're looking at an increase in the bill of $5.32, and then in November 2022, increase of $5.83. The postcard that was mailed out to customers had a transposition error in there. It showed $5.38 rather than $5.83, but this is the correct number presented here. We also look at the impact on above average customers. So this is customers that use 12 CCF per month. And again, we go over this detail with customers during the open houses. That would go up by about $8 a month, November of 2021, and about $8.75 a month in November of 2022. And last, we look at a very large customer, somebody that's using over 28 CCF in a month. That's 56 CCF over a 2-month period. It's a very large amount of water. They'll see their bill go up about $20 in November 2021 and about $21.50 in November of 2022. Very few customers would receive a bill this size. It'd be just very few customers during that summer month that they may have a large bill of this nature. So in addition to the water rates, the fixed and volume charges, the district also has other fees and charges to keep, again, with the district's policy of charging people in proportion to the cost of serving them, so that no customers are overtly subsidizing other customers. We've increased these charges to keep pace with inflation. The charges, frankly, did not increase as much as we might have otherwise expected because of the lower personnel service cost increase that we saw. So presented here are some of the increases that we're talking about, some going up about $5 a month. This information was included in the packet that we sent out. So I'm going to go through these and answer any questions that you may have. But these charges, again, are being proposed to be adjusted to keep us in sync with the cost and to make sure that none of our customers are being asked to subsidize other customers. Okay, so what are our next steps? A couple things. We're going to continue our outreach. We've had our virtual open houses using the Talking Water format. We have one more on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. We preferred not to do these in a virtual format. We really enjoyed the other open houses where customers could come in and get their questions answered, and we had stations where they could walk around and talk to various people. But given where we are with the pandemic, we're doing things in a virtual format, and hopefully we'll be able to get back face-to-face with the customers soon. But we do have that opportunity. It's the same information that is presented at all 3 virtual open houses. The information by the way, those open houses are available on our YouTube channel, so people can go on there and see those if that's a more convenient time for them. Public comments, there's an online form to go to our website. You can also email board@tvwd.org. Mail and written comments to TVWD. You can just simply drop in the mail to our address, 1850 Southwest 170th Avenue, Beaverton, Oregon 97003. All public comments that we receive before 4 p.m. on August 25th will be included in the public record and delivered to the board for its consideration for your actions. And then the last point here is the proposed action would be to adopt new rates by resolution at the November 15th regular meeting and to implement the new rates effective November 1st, 2021 and November 1st, 2022. Now the resolution will be effective November 1st, 2021. The rates in the resolution have two effective dates that are listed here. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions that you may have, or you may move directly to the public hearing.
Do the members of the board have any questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. No? All right. Just as a reminder for everybody, this information is, as Paul stated, available in the virtual water forums that have been held twice already this summer, my apologies, if you want to review this information again. Taking a breath then, I am going to, at this point, open the public hearing for the Tualatin Valley Water District Board to consider water rates and other charges pursuant to the provisions of Oregon Revised Statute 264.312. The notice of this public hearing and its purpose was mailed to district customers. As a reminder, each person wishing to address the board is limited to 5 minutes. Please use the hand raise feature that's available at the top of your screen. Staff will unmute your microphone and indicate you can speak. Please start by stating your name for the record. You do not need to state your address. So at this point, do we have anyone from the public who would like to speak?
Okay. Chris Brown is available to unmute.
Okay. Chris Brown. I don't think Chris has been unmuted yet, Frank.
So Chris, at the top of your screen, you should see an icon that looks kind of like a microphone. It should have a line through it. If you click on that, you will be able to speak.
Is there any way we can help him out with that, Debbie or Frank or Andrea?
Unfortunately, the functionality of Teams does not allow us to unmute somebody. They have to do that for themselves.
All righty. Chris, are you able to find the microphone on your screen? You can also type into chat if you need some help locating it.
This is Andrea. There isn't a chat feature, but if Chris is calling in on a phone, Debbie, I think it's *6. Is that how they unmute from a phone?
That's correct, but we didn't provide the phone number for this meeting, only the link.
Okay.
Do we happen to have Mr. Brown's contact information so we could possibly call him and help him?
Yes, I'll post that in another venue. Andrea, do you mind giving him a call?
I'd be happy to.
All right. My apologies, Chris. Technology is never on our side. You should be getting a phone call here momentarily from one of our staff members. And hopefully we'll get this set up. We do want to give you the opportunity to speak here. So the question is, Chris, do you have a microphone on your computer? Of course, can't answer that because you can't chat. And you can't tell me if you don't have a microphone.
Well, I feel badly that this is happening because we do value the public input, but I'd like to remind Mr. or Ms. Brown, as the case may be, that you can always submit your comments by email and the board will see them and you will get a response.
Let's give Andrea a second to see if she's able to get a hold of him. Yep. Okay. So we're still trying to work through this. Just a second. We don't want to lose him. Looks like everybody's working on it. So we're circling around the runway, waiting for approval to land.
Okay. Hello, this is Chris Brown. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Turns out the organizer had muted me, and that was on your end. Sorry.
I apologize for that, sir. We're still trying. Believe me, we try. We care very much about what you say. Please.
Okay.
The table is yours.
Thank you. Dear board, I am opposed to this rate increase. The 2021 increase is of 9.4%, making Tualatin Valley Water District the second most expensive water supplier in the metro region. I would ask the board to sit very carefully with that thought. The only one higher than you is City of Portland. That's a major step. Oregon minimum wage this year increased by 75 cents an hour. That's a long ways from the 5-something you're asking for of additional rates. Social Security increase this year is 1.3%. Again, almost 1/10 of what your rate increase is. The Oregon CPI is 1.7 for this year currently. That's 5.5 times what your rate increase is. So I have some questions for the board. Has the board ever not approved one of these rate increases? Or is this simply a hearing to cover ORS 264.312. Was the building of the Willamette River Supply approved by voters? The voters being the members of this district who are now having to pay the enormous $300+ million capital expense. If there is no growth within the Washington County area, I do not see a reason to be building this large and expensive water supply system. Some more questions for the board. I see on the charts presented tonight that in 2025-26, the cost of capital expenditures will be decreasing significantly. Will we, the rate users, be seeing a decrease or a freeze of our rates at that point in time? I've been attending these rate increases for since about 2013, 2012 area. And at that time, it was stated that we would be seeing rate increases for about 10 years. Well, we're coming up on that 10 years. And from the financial information I saw tonight, I do not foresee you guys stopping your rate increases that are 5 to 10 times what the increase of Social Security is. I know my salary is not going up 9.4%. I've taken a pay cut. So I think the board needs to look very seriously at what's going on, include us, the members, in more decision making, just not public hearing level, but let's start putting a vote out to the members of the board district to determine what kind of capital expenditures are made. I understand, because I've complained about staff driving the district vehicles on weekends around, leaving grocery stores. And I've been told that's a convenience item for the employee. Well, I, as the ratepayer who pay for that vehicle, I like to see that stopped. I would like to see extraordinary measures made. You said you cut the budget by 2.8%. That's a fifth of your rate increase. When you guys start saying you're cutting budgets by 10% and you still need 10%, then I might be less upset and concerned about this continual rate increase that's occurring. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have anyone else that will be requesting time today? We'll put it out there one more time. Is anyone else interested in presenting this evening on the rate hike or setting of water rates? Okay. Not hearing any other requests to present. The rate hearing is now closed. Does the staff have any additional comments?
President Sanders, no specific comments. I can maybe call Mr. Brown and talk about how the capital expenditures, when they start to drop off, the debt service will kick in and how we've forecast that in the financial plan to level out, but prefer just to talk with Mr. Brown directly and illustrate that if he's interested.
Yeah, now is not the time to have any additional discussions, Paul, as you know. So we will take Chris Brown's comments into consideration and try to address them directly so that he has some clarity and understands why we are where we are. Commissioners, do we have any further questions on information presented by the staff or the citizens? All right. Not hearing any from my fellow board members. As a reminder, the public comment period is open until 4 p.m. on August 25th. The board will consider taking action on the draft proposed resolution at the September 15th board meeting. At this time, we'll now continue on with our regular board meeting. And we will begin by having reports by the CEO and management staff. CEO Hickman.
Thank you. I don't, Paul, did we load mine or we didn't rehearse this part? So.
Yes, it is loaded, and I am trying to get you to the right place. And I keep failing. Hold on a second, Tom. I will.
Well, I'm going to start because it's pretty simple here, and so I'll talk quickly about the Portland Cryptosporidium results. For the month of July 2021, the Portland Water Bureau reported 1 Cryptosporidiomosis detection in water samples collected from the Bull Run Headworks. Complete results of Portland's Cryptosporidium monitoring are posted on the city's website. August 21st, Talking Water. So we have one more, as Paul just mentioned, Talking Water Virtual Forum featuring water rates scheduled for this month. This is an opportunity to share information about the water rate proposal and connect with customers. This session will be held Saturday, August 21st from 9:30 a.m. till 11 a.m. And lastly, before I turn this over for the department report, I hate having to do COVID-19 updates, but here we go. Due to the increase in COVID-19 cases on August 15th, I announced that TVWD will be transitioning back to working from home for those employees that can do so. The goal is to have the transition accomplished by the end of this week. Additional changes or timing will be addressed as the COVID situation evolves. And I will say that we are at pretty minimal staff on site at this point. So we're back to that state here, unfortunately. So with that, unless there's any questions for me, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Engineer Carrie Pack, and she's going to present the Safety Minute and Department Report. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Hickman. Paul, do I get to click on this, or do you do that?
You can request control, or you can direct me to do it. It's up to you.
I only have 4 slides, so I'll just ask you to, next slide. Thank you. So good evening, commissioners, President Sanders, commissioners, good to see you again. I'm sorry for missing the work session last couple weeks ago. As I was mentioning before the meeting, I was hanging out with the buffaloes, or the bisons as they like to call it, in Yellowstone National Park. It was beautiful, and I really, really appreciated some time off. One of the things that we experienced was heat. It was really hot during the day, and there was that area is known for afternoon thunderstorms, and some of the thunderstorms that I experienced, I actually experienced a thunderstorm that's probably about as closest to me as possible. I was standing just outside of the little store that they had at the campground, and it literally blew the computer system out. And we couldn't buy our beer. So we had to wait for the computer to start back up so they could check our IDs and whatnot. So I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about heat illness prevention. And I also took opportunity to steal and recycle as a good sustainability minded person that I am. I'm borrowing these slides from Mr. Kraska from previous presentation. And so if you feel like you've seen this, is because you have seen these before. So
with that, could you go to the next slide, please, Paul? On June 28th of 2021, Portland area hit 116 degrees. That's 116. I think that shattered all records of hot, temperature in the 80 some odd years that we've been keeping track. Exposure to excessive heat really can be deadly. We saw over 100 people in Portland area that died from heat exhaustion during that period. And so this is no joke, and it's not just a lip service. We really, really need to become aware of what heat illness is and what it can do to you. And sometimes, it really can lead to death, and it is a medical emergency. Other heat illness symptoms include, or illnesses include, heat exhaustion or muscle cramps, heat rash. Mostly the muscle cramps are the first symptoms that you'll note as part of the heat illness. And so taking precautions in any temperature, if you're working outside and your job involves physical work activity, taking precautions are highly recommended. And we have, CEO Hickman mentioned that the office is pretty sparsely occupied at this point, but not in the back. We have our field operations staff continuing to come in every day to do the work that is necessary for them to be on site for. And so we're really being mindful of all of the heat exhaustion and heat illness that could be exposed to our staff during this heat domes that we've been experiencing. So next slide, please. Some of the risk factors for heat illness, obviously, high temperature and humidity that results in heat index could cause lots of heat illness symptoms. Direct sun shining directly at you is obviously an indication, a risk factor. When there's no breeze or wind, it feels like it's hotter than it really, even what the temperature might show. And not drinking enough water, exerting heavy physical labor, wearing protective clothing, and recent exposure to hot places, exposure to hot workplace also are risk factors for all heat illnesses. Next slide, please. So what can we do? Drink lots of water. Almost pint to a quarter an hour, depends on the condition. I think the latest OSHA recommendation is that we drink 2 cups every 20 hours, or a cup every 20 hours. Mike Jacobs is online. I took the test and I forgot the numbers. So, drink lots of water and take breaks. Have access to shade and take breaks in the shade every hour. Plan your work so that you can, try to get out to work sites during when the temperature is lower. So we've been adjusting our workload where staff are coming in earlier, even earlier than 7 o'clock in the morning. They've been coming in at 6 in the morning to take advantage of some of the cooler temperature in the morning. And, always monitor the weather and as you become more acclimated, you can probably handle a little bit more heat. But again, take other precautions to understand the symptoms and be ready for any emergency response should it be needed. So that's it for me today. And if you move to the next slide, we're going to go right into the Engineering and Operations Department update. And tonight, you might notice that we have a larger than normal number of folks that are attending the board meeting. And that's because I've asked some of our folks that were involved in the Corn Pass PRV station rehab project that Ryan Smith is going to present to you tonight. But I've asked the guys that actually did the work to come and be recognized. Not everybody is here because at least I know JT or Jake Boris is on vacation, but a bunch of other folks, including Ryan Lewis, Ryan Hansen, JT Keating, Alex Sykes, and Walt Herb are here. And if they had their cameras on, they could probably turn it on for a little bit so you can be recognized and be take pride in the work that Ryan is about to present to you. And before I hand it over to Ryan, I just want to say a few words about Ryan. Ryan Smith's title is Maintenance Engineering Supervisor. We also call him just a go-to person. Whenever there's an emergency that needs some attention, we call up Ryan. He is 911 answerer for all of our most difficult problems that we have at the district. And with that as an introduction, Ryan, I will turn my camera and mic off and let you take it away. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carrie. Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, everybody. I am here today to talk about an emergency project. Hopefully this advances. There we go. That we had out at our Cornelius Pass facility as a manifold repair. And I've got a lot of pictorial slides here, and I will do my best to talk slowly and work our way through it. But we'll have a little bit of time at the end if anybody has any questions. So to start things out, our Cornelius Pass facility is up on the corner intersection of Highway 26 and Cornelius Pass Road. It is our intake facility off of the North Transmission Line for the Joint Water Commission. We take water into both the 435 and the 385 pressure zones at that facility. So it's a fairly complicated manifold, a lot of large piping in there. Off to the left of our screen here is a schematic view of how the piping network works outside of the pump station, or excuse me, the pressure relief and fluoride station. We bring water in from the joint water through the 66-inch water main that reduces down to a 54-inch. It hits a normally closed valve and then comes into our facility. Once it comes in, this is a schematic view of how the piping manifold works inside the station. The 130 PSI Joint Water Commission water is reduced down to either 93 PSI, which translates to our 435 pressure zone, which is one of our largest pressure zones, or about 72 PSI, and it heads out to our 385 pressure zone. I bring all this up because isolating this system out in order to perform the work that I will later describe was a fairly complicated procedure. It took a lot of our crew and staff and careful planning in order to do what we call double block and bleed in order to isolate it to physically pull the pipes out. It's also important to understand how the water flows in the facility because we took pretty extreme measures and worked a lot with the city of Hillsboro so that we could keep water flowing in the North Transmission Line so it never sat for too long of a period and had a degradation in water quality. And so we'd always be able to turn it on in a moment's notice if it turned out we needed to in case of an emergency. This is just for reference. This is a picture of the inside of the facility. Like most of our water facilities, they're fairly difficult to take pictures of, especially when you're just an engineer like me and not very good at remembering to take pictures in the first place. This is what the facility looked like when it was all originally put together before we took it apart. So our story starts out with our operators were out doing their daily, what they call rounds, adding fluoride to the facility, checking things over, taking notes, jotting down meter reads, things like that. And over a period of time, they started to notice some rusty water staining on top of one of our manifolds. And then it progressed and they brought it to our attention and we did a little look at it and noticed that it was indeed leaking from the inside out, which is a very rare occurrence for us. Most of the time, our leaks are corrosion related to buried pipelines from the outside in. So this one grabbed our attention pretty quickly, especially since it's on one of our sources. We came up with a quick repair. This leak, of course, is in a very difficult place to patch or repair in place. So we developed this almost what you would kind of consider like a repair band and strapped to the pipe. We didn't know, worst case scenario, that leak would open up, a velocity starts to increase across that small orifice, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. So we didn't want that to happen. So we put this on to stop the hemorrhaging before it even started. In the meantime, we were concerned about, this was, let's see, March, and we knew that, increasing water demands are coming. We wanted to see, was this the only instance? Was the whole place looking not good? So we were able to isolate the facility. open up some 2-inch air release that are on top of the pipe and insert a camera here. This is a couple of our crew members, Colton and Jeremy's our fleet coordinator, helping out with this project. And I'd like to highlight all the folks that were involved with this, multiple departments, divisions, and throughout the entire district that came together to help pull this project off. So here is a quick look at this is a picture of a picture, so I apologize for the picture quality here, but you can see in the upper left kind of the location of where this was taken. The actual leak that we found was here, but we put cameras in anywhere that we could put the camera in to get a good look at what was going on. And I point this portion out because this was our first indication that, uh-oh, there's a little bit bigger problem here than just the original leak. Some of these are corrosion growth that you see on the inside, which is supposed to be the lining of the pipe. During that time, we created a as-built drawing of the piece of manifold that we were potentially looking at replacing. That way, we had that record of what that piece of pipe looked like in case something happened to it, and we needed to fabricate a new one. The district procured a ultrasonic metal thickness gauge. We have been tricked by the optics of the camera insertions into our pipes before. It's not quite as good as putting your actual eyes on it, and there's nothing that you can actually measure with it. So we procured the ultrasonic thickness gauge while we were working our way through this. A lot of this isn't a linear process. A lot of these things were happening all concurrently. And this is one of the actions that we took to figure out, we could write down exactly how the thicknesses were. So we can put this device on the steel pipelines and then tell how much wall is remaining. And the areas that are circled, circle number 1 here was where the leak had sprung, but the other circles are places that we didn't get very good readings, or we found that there was potential serious corrosion, and it also lined up pretty well with what we were able to see with the cameras. So we worked back and forth with our fabricator. Jeremy, the person that was helping us with the camera inspection before, the fleet coordinator, he had a pretty good working relationship with a local fabricator that had the capacity to complete the rebuild of the manifold for us. So we removed the manifold section. And like I said, this isn't exactly a timeline picture, but I put this picture of the blind flange here in this presentation early, so that to represent the fact that we took a lot of care to make sure that we could still flow water through the facility if it turned out that we needed to in the event of emergency. So we pulled out the corner piece. It's a 24-inch piece of manifold with a 12-inch and a 6-inch outlet in it, also a 90-degree bend. So it's a really complicated piece. We had our drawing, but the fabricator wanted the piece out so that he could duplicate it exactly. And I have a picture of that coming up shortly. So while we had it all apart, we ended up having to take a lot of the manifold pieces apart in order to get the one part out, because you have to find the disassembly joint, then work your way backwards to the piece that you're shooting for. So that got us the ability to get in and get our eyeballs on a lot more of the manifold, and then also do some camera inspection on some areas that were fairly difficult to get prior. So the camera identified some pretty significant corrosion, internal corrosion. We went through, in the right there, you can see the ultrasound jelly and some of the readings that we were taking. The areas that were NA, where there isn't enough metal there to get an accurate reading from the thickness gauge, the ultrasound machine. This is Walt. He is our resident pipeline inspector. He was the one that went inside of our pipe, and so the 24-inch bend that we'd removed was removed from right here. He crawled in there, had lots of safety procedures in there in order to get him in there and put his eyes on what is actually things look like and how bad it was. You can see this cow pattern type. We kind of described it. Corrosion issues happening here. That is actually discolored lining. And you could push down on those brown sections, and there was water between the lining and the actual steel of the pipe. Off to the right here, you can see a picture. This is a picture Walt took looking down into basically towards JWC side, down the 45 as it exits our facility. Off to the left here, you can see what we believe is one of the major reasons that we had all the issues. It was poor craftsmanship. We think that the coating, or excuse me, the lining was not applied properly, and we also believe that the preparation was not done properly in order to get the performance and the duration out of the lining that we'd expect for an epoxy lining to happen. And that is definitely emphasized by the picture on the right. This is the actual bend piece before we took it off to the fabricator. The leak was up near the top portion right here, but you can see the rest of it was in pretty similar condition. This piece ended up being replaced completely. And in order, hopefully this plays, if you are listening, especially if you're listening with a headset on, turn your volume down. I'm going to play a video in the next slide. It's a process that we call needle scaling, and we used it to go through a lot of our pipes, because we ultimately ended up having them sandblasted and recoated, but we needed to know what areas were really bad, what needed to be replaced before we sent them out. So we had an idea of what to expect and to plan for before we got everything. You know, we got the bad news, we had to replace a whole section. It allowed us to do a lot more thorough inspection. So I'm gonna play a video of that next. It is rather loud and a rather annoying noise. So turn your sound down, and then after the video plays, turn it back up and I'll finish the presentation. Okay, so here we go. All right, so that video showed a bunch of sections that were fairly common from what we found in a lot of the pipeline, where the liner had delaminated from the interior of the pipe and was not really doing us any good. There was also areas where it was still adhered pretty well, and it took sandblasting to take it off. So once we got into understanding kind of what we're up against, this matrix kind of represents the decision process that we went through with a lot of staff, internally, engineering, operators, and everybody else that had a general interest in the project, as how we went through and thought about and discussed what we were going to do. We were going to leave it as is and just fix things as they pop up. Nobody thought that was a good idea. It was really risky. Repair it in place, which is fairly difficult to do considering the linings. Repair it in place and somehow repair the linings in place, remove it all, repair it, reline and coat it, or fabricate the whole new place. We decided that to fabricate the whole new place wasn't necessary. There was still a lot of good material there and we could rehabilitate it. And so that's how we went about the project. This is a quick shot of the fabricators at work while we were working on everything else on our side, getting the replacement piece put together. This is when we went out to pressure test the part. This is some blind flanges that we brought out with us and some bolt kits because they didn't happen to have anything like that. Off to the right, it's a pretty interesting procedure on how they do that. They've got a very thick floor plate that they can weld. They basically set our old piece on the ground, welded all these target flanges up to it, and then fabricated back to those pieces again in order to get the part exactly how we had it. Pretty ingenious, and it worked out really well for us there. And the piece fit pretty well. We found a bunch of other issues, so we kind of skip forward a little bit. We got into disassembling the entire facility because we realized that the problem was the whole place. Off to the left there, you can see we found a bolt that had been stretched because it was over torqued. We found on the right here a bunch of external corrosion from where the manifold penetrated the foundation of the building. We ended up working with Liberty Fabrication again. They came out and cut and welded disassembly flanges for us on some of the 36 and 24-inch diameter pipelines. The facility was obviously not built to be able to be taken apart like this. So this allowed us to disassemble it, take it off, have it blasted and coated, and then put it back together. Just another picture of us flying in or flying out some very large diameter pipes. Mr. Hansen here, one of our operators, rigging up, or maybe he's unrigging at this point, but we pulled the pipes from where they were, allowed the fabricators to get back in and tack the pipes, the flanges to the pipes from the inside also, so that they were secure enough for us to put them on the trucks to transport them to their facility where they did all the repairs and finished all the welds. As I mentioned, a couple more of our operators, Mick and Ben, helping out back at the shop while the rest of our crew is out at the facility. Ben's inside the pipe running that needle scaler, earplugs and earmuffs on, and all kinds of PPE, while Mick's helping him with the vac, remove some of the materials that he's finding so that we could get some thickness, some pitting depth information. We kind of determined that if there was over 25% of the wall deteriorated, that we would replace that section of pipe. Quick shot of one of the 36 by 24 inch manifolds at the fabricator's facility. We ended up having to have, this was one of those circles that we, circled areas that we found, I showed earlier, where the ultrasonic thickness investigation. Turns out that this cone reducer was completely bad, and they rolled a new one and replaced it for us. Fast forward to the facility completely with their new, what we called our new open concept. All of our pipes removed. This allowed us to get in, clean up all the pipe saddles, and get prepared for us to receive all the new pipes and start reinstallation. Another shot of the facility bare. Mr. Alex Sykes here working to clean our flanges as we put things together. When we took things apart, we noticed that there was the contractor that originally built it had used some silicone and things like that in some of the bolts in order to get a watertight seal. We took the extra steps as operators to make sure that that was not going to be required, and were able to put the entire facility back together without leaks. So this is the new piece that had the leak right here from the beginning. Here's Ryan Lewis hanging a 24-inch butterfly valve on it. Give you an idea of the scale of the manifold pieces. So this was one piece from here. This is one of the new flanges we cut in to here. This is the fabricated, all completely brand new fabricated piece that had the original leak. Jake Bars, unfortunately, he's the one that's out camping this week. He was the crew lead on the project, all around workhorse, great operator, and great to work with on this project. You can see that we're making some pretty significant progress on getting things bolted back together here in the picture. The pipes penetrated through the foundation as they headed towards or from the north transmission line. So I put these two pictures there to kind of show what it looked like when we took it apart, and then what it looked like when we got it all put back together prior to epoxy setting all the new rebar and repouring the foundation walls. All this material that was backfilled with 3/4 minus was all wrapped and coated, ready, put back. This is one of my last slides. This is John Keating, another one of our JT, one of our waterworks operators. This also shows the facility pretty much as it looks right now, all completed. We are waiting for water demands to come back down, and then we're going to contract with a painter to go through and have everything coated so it's nice and uniform. My last slide is to give a special thanks to everybody else that helped with the project, especially the city of Hillsboro. Our upstream valve is actually what city of Hillsboro calls the stadium valve. So every time we needed to turn the facility on or off to double block and bleed it, they were out operating a 54-inch valve for us. Very helpful, and they were right there, great partner in a project. Everybody else listed here, support staff came out and helped out with the project, or hands-on in some way. Liberty Metal Fabrication was our fabricator we used for the project. Very great, good to work with. I really look forward to working with them in the future on a couple other projects. And then obviously everyone else, while the construction crew was out focused on this project, everybody that was here keeping the water flowing. That concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions.
I just want to add a couple words. This project is not the kind of project that we do on a regular basis. And one of the things that we are learning is how to design facilities like this in a tight spaces that will allow us to work around in it once it's constructed. When you have a building that's big and it's completely packed with big pipes that don't bend when you're trying to get it out, just makes it really, really difficult to operate and maintain inside of it. One of the things that we were really hoping that this presentation was going to be in person is because, as you probably noticed in those pictures, none of these guys actually like getting their pictures taken. They're always the humble servant that's doing the work rather than being the top or being the spotlight, being in the spotlight. And I can't say how much I can't say enough how proud I am of working with these folks and just fabulous talents that we have. And we're really, really thankful for all the folks. And we're also very, very thankful for your support, your continued support that you give us to be able to do our job correctly and to be able to deliver our water to our customers. So thank you so much for all your support. And that's it for our presentation with the department report. And I'll hand it back to CEO Hickman unless there's additional questions from anyone.
This is Jim Dowd. I would like to congratulate Ryan and his staff. I wish I could have had crews like that when I was chief engineer in Portland. This is a remarkable job, and it was done without any fanfare, and that's really cool.
And we came on budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn.
Well, this is Commissioner Duggan. I'd like to echo that. I am impressed and in awe that that little sign of a boil on the top of one of the pipes turned into such a major renovation, extreme makeover for that facility. So I am just in awe at the work that was done and the fact that our crew is able to tackle stuff like that and work with the fabricator and get everything back ship shape. So kudos. Thank you.
Anything more from the CEO or management staff?
Nothing more from me, President Senators, but I will share that very proud of the staff and the work they did on that. And I was lucky enough to get to go out there and look at it and see some of the work they were doing. And I could not have imagined any crew I've ever worked with being able to self-perform that work. So I was pretty impressed, and beyond pretty impressed. It was very impressed that they got that done. And the fact that they found it before it was completely failed, can't say enough about that.
Indeed. Maybe we could ask Ryan, how long did that take from the time of discovery until you buttoned and completed the project?
I think we were right about 3 months total. We were shooting to have water on by June 1st, and we met that goal. I think the first or second, we were flowing about 10 million gallons a day through that facility. Right
on. Yeah, very impressive by everybody. Congratulations on excellent work. Alrighty, next thing then is to address commissioners' communications. And so now the commissioners will report on recent meetings attended. And we will begin alphabetically, of course, with Commissioner Bagnell.
That's right. When I got married, I vaulted to the head of the alphabet. So I only have 3 meetings to report at this time. The first one was on not really a meeting, on the 27th of July. I was fortunate enough to attend the employee appreciation lunch at the TVWD facility, and that was wonderful fun, and it was just terrific to see so many of the staff there live and in person. And I'm glad we got it done before the mask mandate and the lockdown came back. On the 3rd of August, I attended the board work session where we discussed the Willamette Water Supply project. We discussed current events with COVID, and we also discussed how we might go forward offering hybrid meetings. And of course, on the 18th, tonight's meeting with regular district business and the rate hearing.
Righto. Thank you, Commissioner Bagnell. Commissioner Doan. You are muted, Commissioner Doan. Still muted, Commissioner Doan. There you go.
Yeah, right. Last week I sat through 2 rate discussions, and the Aloha Business Association. Yesterday I was in a discussion with Bob Willis and Todd and Tom about what to do with Beaverton, and of course the work session and tonight's meeting. As you may or may not know, Bob Willis is running the Beaverton Water Department at the moment. So I think we have an opening there that will be very helpful in the future. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Doan. Commissioner Duggan?
Pretty busy month for summer. I unfortunately was not able to attend the reopening luncheon. I was having a reaction to a vaccine, not the vaccine that people think about, but I had a shingles shot and was not feeling well after that shingles shot. So I was unable to attend that luncheon that I had planned on being at. On the 3rd, I attended our board work session where we received an update on the Willamette Water Supply System and other updates. On the 4th, I met with our CEO and council about a business item. On the 5th, I attended the Willamette Water Supply board meeting, just the regular monthly meeting. On the 10th, I met with our board president and CEO to discuss tonight's agenda. On the 11th, I was able to attend one of the virtual rates open houses, and then tonight's meetings.
Thank you, Commissioner Duggan. Commissioner Schmidt.
My meetings mirror Commissioner Bagnell's, the work session on the 3rd and tonight's meeting.
All right. Thank you, sir. For myself, I, like Commissioner Bagnell, attended the staff appreciation lunch on the 27th, and will echo her sentiments. It was marvelous to see everybody in human form again. Really enjoyed that, and enjoyed the entertainment as well. That was fun to watch. On the 28th, I met with the CEO and General Counsel to discuss some TVWD business agenda items. And then on the 3rd, we had our work session, which everybody has already alluded to. On the 10th, I met with the CEO and Commissioner Duggan to go over the agenda planning meeting for tonight's meeting. On the 11th, I attended one of the virtual open houses for the water rates, the morning or lunchtime session. And then, as Jim Doan had just mentioned, we had a meeting that included Mr. Willis from currently a consultant currently working with Beaverton to discuss ways that perhaps TVWD could become a better partner with Beaverton. This is an opportunity. There's a past and then there's a future. and hopefully the future will be very bright in our relationships with Beaverton. And then last but not least, tonight's monthly meeting. Alrighty, that being said, next item up is topics to be raised by commissioners. And I ask, do we have any topics to be raised by commissioners this evening? Alrighty, not hearing any. Next is public comment, where public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the agenda. Additional public comment will be invited on agenda items as they are presented. Do we have any persons who would like to comment? Okay, not hearing any at this time. We will move on to consent agenda items, where consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. We seek approval of the July 21st, 2021 regular meeting minutes and approval of the August 3rd, 2021 work session minutes. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Commissioner Bagnall. I so move.
And I'll second.
Jim Doan seconds. Jim Doan seconds. I'd like to ask our district recorder to provide the roll call vote.
Commissioner Bagnall?
Do I say yes or aye? Either one.
Commissioner Doan?
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders?
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
All righty then. The motion passes. Next item is the business agenda, which is to consider adopting Resolution 9-21, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners directing the Chief Executive Officer to take reasonable and necessary steps to increase the COVID-19 vaccination rate amongst district employees. At this time, we're going to entertain a board discussion. There are within the packet two possible alternatives listed per our discussion during the work session. Each of the board members has hopefully had a chance to review them, and at this time, we can discuss people's preferences for either one. And the floor is open to any board member to speak at this time.
I think this is Dick. I think what we discussed in the exec session is about as far as it can really go. But we can make a decision now. Out.
Well, this is Commissioner Duggan. I am in support of the first alternate, and I was trying to get up the latest version of it, but I do have a concern about alternate one in that it allows an employee to request an exception at October 20th, pushing it way out, where I think if we have an employee that wants to request an exception, they should be doing it fairly certain so that we can get the employees or get our employees vaccinated or have a decision sooner than October 20th. And I was wondering if staff had any idea or had suggestion on how that would work if we're allowing an exemption to be made all the way at the end of October, when we're asking for the rest of the staff to produce vaccination information at that time as well.
So, Commissioner Duggan, could you clarify your question for me in what pushing it out by what I think I'm understanding is you're saying by allowing it to go out to October 20th and versus shortening it, is there?
Yes, I'm sorry I wasn't more clear. My intent is that the employees that are seeking an exemption, they should probably do that by September 8th or at least the 15th in order to be fully vaccinated by the deadline in the alternate one of October 20th. And if there's going to be an exemption that was denied, maybe they would change their mind and would be able to be vaccinated by the 20th. So that's really what I'm getting at, is thinking that maybe we should be requesting or having the employees request an exemption before that, so that there's some certainty for all the staff by October 20th.
So I'm going to ask either Amy or Mike to weigh in on that, because I'm not quite sure. They're the ones that are going to look at the mechanics and be the ones checking. Can either Amy or Mike, could either one of you speak to that question? Mike? Amy?
Well, maybe while they're checking in on something, Clark has his hand up. Let's hear what Clark has to offer.
Thanks, President Sanders. So a couple things. I want to clarify the earlier session that we had was a work session. It wasn't an executive session, and that was the work session on August 3rd. And the direction at that point was to come back with a couple of alternatives. And one was alternative one, which is mandating vaccines except in the disability or sincerely held religious belief exemption. And then the other was alternative two was the essentially what we have now, encouraging vaccination but doing testing if you're not. So I just want to make sure as we set it up, particularly for the public, alternative one is mandating, alternative two is encouraging. And then from there, we would develop testing protocols and all those sorts of things. And that sort of gets to your question. We have flexibility in that October 20th date. Absolutely. I think the issue, and this is really what Mike and Amy need to speak to, is, if we're moving toward a mandating mode, then the advice that we get from, labor and employment folks is you need to have adequate time for folks to get through that process to, establish medical status or whatever it is we're going to require on the religious belief and that sort of thing. So, we need to make sure that there's adequate information out there. We need to make sure that there are adequate paths for them to follow and that it's clearly stated. And then on top of that, just the timing to get all that done. So I think Amy and Mike can speak to the timing of all that, but we do need to make sure that we allow adequate time, and that's the real point. And so if anybody is accused of picking October 20th, it was me. And so that date can change. Thank you.
And I see that Amy has her hand up, so I think she can weigh in.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, great. I was having mic issues earlier. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what Clark said, we can and for Commissioner Duggan, we can definitely push out the date even further if that is the desire of the board. But I do think that we need to give employees enough time to either get their disability or religious exemption sorted out, or the fact that if they are going to get vaccinated, that they have that it's the Moderna one as a whole month, and then they have to wait 2 weeks after that to be fully vaccinated. So that I would suggest pushing that date out to October.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. I did have one other concern, and that is testing being limited just to unvaccinated employees. With the latest information that's come out with the Delta variant, where fully vaccinated people are having breakthrough cases and are able to transfer it. I think the testing shouldn't be just limited to unvaccinated folks. I think it should be limited to potential exposure from known cases, regardless of vaccination status. And I think that I would like it, if we go with one of the alternates, that we allow staff to judiciously use testing, not only for unvaccinated employees, but also for vaccinated employees that might have been exposed, just the way things are going in the last week or so.
This is Jim Doan. I agree with Commissioner Duggan. There's no reason that somebody can't volunteer to have a test if they're concerned. And I think that should be open to anybody, regardless of vaccination status. I think it would add peace of mind to our employees. Also, I'm not sure what pushing out means. Does it mean making it beyond October 20th? Or does it mean what? Amy said she was thinking about pushing out, and I'm not sure what that means.
I'm sorry, to just be clear, I thought I was hearing from Commissioner Duggan to allow employees time to get vaccinated if that is the decision they're going to make, or to get their exemptions from being vaccinated. And so therefore, if we need to have a later date, such as October, to get those their house in order or vaccinated, that's what I was talking about.
I would like to see it September 20th. I don't think there's any reason to mess around with this thing. I think the response is urgent. And I think we just need to make our employees safe. And if we went to the 20th of September, that is a month and 2 days. And there's a 31-day month. Clark?
Well, I think one thing is, remember, if we're looking at alternative one, you're talking about mandating. So, is that the policy choice that the board wants to make? The board gave indication 2 weeks ago that it wanted to do alternative two, the encouraging vaccination. We really haven't talked about whether or not circumstances have changed where you want to go to a mandatory, and that's fine. But I just want to make sure that we construct something that allows a reasonable time, keeping in mind that we can include that from this day forward, we have the testing protocol in place so that testing is happening right now, with the understanding then that there's a time for ultimate compliance, considering that, like, as Amy said, if somebody goes and gets the Pfizer shot today or the Moderna shot today, and they've got to wait another 30 days after that, I mean, you're not going to hit your September 20th deadline or whatever that day is. I mean, it feels like you've got to have a longer period built in, but I don't know the ins and outs of getting vaccinations, how fast it could happen, that sort of thing. But there are just some practical limitations that we have to account.
Well, okay. Let's go with the soonest possible, given the practicalities of testing and people getting notes from their priest or whatever. But I want this to happen sooner rather than later. I don't want more employees exposed than is absolutely necessary or the minimum.
Well, this is Dick. In my case, I have infusions every 3 weeks and then 1 week off. And my doctor told me if I wanted to get vaccinations, I had to get them on my week off. Now that's a month apart. And I'm due for another booster too, which is coming at some point. And so I think September is kind of early.
Yeah, I think council's advice is a good one. It's probably going to take a little bit of time. The one thing I noticed is we don't have the vaccine centers like we did a few months ago, and now you have to go to the CVS or Rite Aid or Target or something, and you have to schedule that. So I'm giving some time for people to, so a grace period for them to find time in their schedule and to make a reservation to get their shots is probably going to be necessary. I think October 20th might turn out to be a reasonable timeline.
I appreciate for staff making that clarification. And I'm comfortable with that should the board choose alternate one.
This is Jim Doan again. I can live with whatever works for the rest of the board. I just want it to be that we proceed on this as rapidly as is reasonable. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not the one to decide what is reasonable.
Tom, did you have another point you needed to make?
So all I was going to suggest with that timeline, maybe you can set it as a goal, and then we can figure out, exactly what the mechanics are to get there. So if you said we would like to see all staff either have an exemption in place or fully vaccinated by this date, kind of as a aspirational thing, then we can set the mechanics in place to try to achieve that.
As Commissioner Bagnall, I think that's a good suggestion, because I think that once we start the process, I would fully expect that things will crop up, that you will start hearing from staff, well, I'm trying to do that, but here's why I can't. And so it is an aspirational goal, and we need to understand there's going to be exceptions.
Tom, this is Jim Doan. If it moves beyond the 20th, would you inform the board?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your consideration. Is there any other discussion that needs to be had either from our leadership or the board members? Okay, I'm going to bring forth the motion then. Let me make sure I read it correctly here. I move that the board adopt a resolution mandating vaccines for all district employees except an employee who has a disability or religious belief that prevents him or her from receiving the vaccination. I further move that the resolution set the time for vaccination compliance by delivery of proof of vaccination to the district or a submitted request for exemption no later than August 20th, 2021, and that the chief executive officer is directed to implement a testing program for all unvaccinated employees at district expense and otherwise develop and take all necessary steps to implement the resolution. Do I have a motion?
President Sanders, this is Commissioner Bagnall.
Mm-hmm.
I would make that motion, but you said August 20th, and I do believe we're talking about October 20th. So
My apologies.
I
Let me reread it.
With that amendment.
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Can I
I'd like
just do that?
Why don't we just reread it just for the record? I move that the board adopt a resolution mandating vaccinations for all district employees, except an employee who has a disability or religious belief that prevents him or her from receiving the vaccination. I further move that the resolution set the time for vaccination compliance by delivery of proof of vaccination to the district or a submitted request for exemption no later than October 20th, 2021, and the chief executive officer is directed to implement a testing program for all unvaccinated employees at district expense and otherwise develop and take all steps necessary to implement the resolution. Do I have a motion?
This is Jim Doan, so moved.
This is Commissioner Bagnall, and I second.
Well, I'd like to ask the district recorder to provide a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
The motion passes. All right. It's been a heck of a day. There being no further business before the Board of Commissioners, this meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chair, may
Yes,
I just
sir.
say something real quick? In that motion that was passed, I do want district management to test vaccinated employees as they see fit, depending upon circumstances as it relates to breakthrough cases and things like that. I know the motion said unvaccinated, but I hope that the rest of the board concurs that it could include vaccinated employees as needed.
This is Clark. Excuse me. I think that would be helpful to have as a accessory motion to the motion you just passed, just for clarity's sake. So I hate to make you restate it, but it'd be helpful.
Problem.
Mr. Chair, I so move that we amend our last action to include testing as determined needed by the CEO for breakthrough cases and in protecting staff members regarding transmission, regardless of vaccination status.
Do I have a second?
I second. Dick?
Go ahead, Nick.
Very good. One more time, Debbie, can we get a roll call vote on the addendum indicating testing as determined needed by the management staff?
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience and endurance, and sorry I came Johnny lately on that request, but I want to make this work as well as possible. I didn't think that I would be at this point. I thought that at this point I would be favoring option 2, but given the recent circumstances and the situation even at Portland Community College, they're going to be requiring all faculty and students to be fully vaccinated before coming to school this fall. I think we're going to be joining a lot of folks that are going to have to make this difficult decision, and so that's why I supported alternate 1. Thank you for the extra time.
This is Commissioner Bagnall. I'd like to thank Commissioner Duggan for those comments, because I too thought that I would be supporting alternative 2, and the rush and swirl of current events. It's frightening how quickly things have escalated, and we have to make the tough decision that so many other jurisdictions are making as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Duggan, and thank you, Commissioner Bagnall. And I'd also like to note my appreciation to all the board members for openly communicating, expressing their concerns, their fears, and respecting everybody's opinion and working together to move forward. We hope that in making this decision, this will help TVWD move forward. It will allow our management team to focus on things other than COVID. We have in our hands right now, we are entering into a 4-year process of, multi-billion-dollar project, and we need to have everybody on board focusing on achieving success in that project. So part of the decision made today was in support of that reality. We need everybody's energy focused forward on this project. All right. Any last comments before we wrap things up then this evening?
I am happy to be a member of the TVWD board who takes such positive action to protect our employees and providing water to our customers.
I think we all share that sentiment, Commissioner Doan. All right. There being no further business before the Board of Commissioners, this meeting is adjourned.